Okay, hello everybody, buongiorno, hey, welcome. My name is Michael Jordan, Sommelier for the people right here. Yes, Master Sommelier, Certified Wine Educator, and I'm delighted to be bringing you Northern Italy in an hour and a half. Here we go. All right, so I'm excited to bring this for you. We've been working on this, and I wanted to say this is not just dry education. We're going to infuse some humor. Hopefully it's funny to you and enjoyable, and not just detailed in facts and lists and classifications, but more of a real kind of an armchair adventure, and bring you into the region with lots of images and photographs and those types of things. We're going to cruise through northern Italy down to Emilia-Romagna. And we will have another second installment of this program called Southern Italy in an hour and a half. It will be coming up later. And I wanted to say clearly, and I wanted to give actual credit to many of the images that you're going to see in this program are from the internet, from the Court of Master Sommeliers, from the Society of Wine Educators. They're from many wineries, from many writers and other people that have taken photographs. Some are my photographs, most of them aren't. And I want to make sure that nobody is publishing this as a piece because some may be proprietary, and I want to acknowledge all of those folks that provided the images for this session. I am going to be recommending wines and regions and grapes and things, and the intention was that we can have a really fun class and dig into some places that are not your everyday run-of-the-mill stuff, along with some of the very classic things that we should know if we are studying Italy in earnest, and wine lovers too. But I wanted to also create some interest and maybe some cool stuff that you may or may not know. And I will also be recommending wines. Now, I don't endorse or oppose any causes. I want to say I have respect for all people, no matter who they are. And I certainly hope to present something that's enjoyable and educational. And the last thing that I would ever want to do would be to offend anybody that's listening or watching. I am Italian. I have an Italian humor, and I'm going to have a little humor in the show. And I hope that you'll find it funny and fun too. And away we go. And we're going to go northern Italy in an hour. Avanti. Well, look, Italy is a peninsula that sticks out into the Mediterranean, and the Adriatic Sea is on one side, and the Tyrrhenian Sea is on the other side, and the Mediterranean down below. It's all part of the Mediterranean. The Ligurian Sea up at the northern end, but it's a peninsula. And at the top of that peninsula, there are the Alps, okay, and we're bordered by France and Switzerland and Austria and then Slovenia. And these are the bordering countries. And as the peninsula extends to the south, basically, into the Mediterranean, we find the climate warms up tremendously as the farther south we go down into the Mediterranean. Up in the north, we have the Alps. And those Alps, as you can see here on this slide, it's the Alps, man, the French Alps and the Swiss Alps and the Austrian Alps, the Italian Alps. And that is a wide mountain range that created a very significant border and barrier to inhibit and prohibit the traveling in and out of northern Italy easily, and so although Italy has been conquered by all kinds of people over the years and results in what it is today, it was very difficult for Italians to export their products, their foodstuffs, their wines, and everything until modern times, because carrying cases of wine or big amphoras of wine up over those Alps to get them into other countries was very difficult. The other regions and countries around them were producing their own wines as well, so there wasn't a huge desire. But as you can see here, these are the Alps, and they circle all of northern Italy, all the way from the Maritime Alps by the border of France, all the way up and around, and create that significant boundary. Okay, as far as wine production, the world of wine, Italy is the largest producer of wine in the world, and second is France. At one point, France was number one, but Italy has increased, and now Italy produces around somewhere between 45 and 50 million hectoliters of wine per year. And for those of you, that is about 6.5 billion bottles of wine. 6.5 billion bottles of wine. It's a lot of wine. So we said it was about 50 million hectoliters, and a hectoliter is exactly 130 bottles of wine, the 750 ml bottles of wine. And just in case you ever wondered why they're not liter bottles, or why are they that size? Well, the guys that were blowing the glass to make the bottles, lung size was only so big, and they could produce a bottle that was like 750 ml. So we kind of stuck with it, and that's what we got. Now, in Italy, I want to point out that, the long history of this, what is now a republic and a country, up until 1861, this was not even one country. There was not one Italy. And even as late as 1815, if you see the map on the left-hand side, let's look at that first and study that for a moment, because this was the regions of what we call Italy in 1815, as late as 1815. Now, United States, had already well on their way, 1776, right? But Italy, even in 1815, this wasn't very long ago, gang. It was only 9 regions, and these were the regions. I especially like the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Yeah, okay. And then if you look at what the Papal State, around Rome, and it went a little farther north, and then Tuscany is about the same area where Tuscany is now. And then what is now Emilia-Romagna was part of the Papal State, what is Lucca, Modena, and Parma, okay, which are now still provinces there in Emilia-Romagna, but we got plenty of time to get there. So look, 9 regions. Can you believe that? In 1815. Well, fast forward to today, we have 20 regions of Italy. And we did not create the Republic of Italy and call it one Italy until 1861. Right? That's not very long ago. There was no one Italian language. There still isn't. And I'll get into more of that. But today, Italy is 20 regions. 94 provinces exist within those regions. And Italy is very provincial. They are competitive. The folks over here and the folks over there, they hate each other. They're competing against each other all the time. And one guy is telling the other guy, hey, my mama makes the sauce better than your mama does. And the other guy's like, no way. And they get in a big argument, and they're very passionate, and it's funny. But it's true. They're very competitive. They compete a lot. Now, there's 8,000 communes growing grapes. 8,000. 900,000 registered vineyards, 1.2 million growers, and over 1,300 registered grape varieties. That's why Italy is so hard to teach, so complex, and can go on for days and days and days. And still, we don't even scratch the surface. Okay. And if you think about it, I believe because of the provinces and all the different dialects, there's over 140 languages verified in Italy right now, and they're all different dialects from all these different provinces based off of ancient Latin, and which has become what we call Italian today. Now, it's kind of funny because, you know, the folks up in the north can't understand the people down in the south. And the guys in the north, by the way, they kind of hate the guys in the south. They look down on them because up in the north, you know, they're a little snobby and they're wealthy. And then down in the south, there are a lot of poor people. And, you know, the north hates the south and the south hates the north, and everybody hates Sicily. I'm teasing. But it's kind of true. And then Sicily doesn't like a lot of the other of Italy, and they don't consider themselves Italians. They consider themselves Sicilians, and everybody's very proud of their province, their region, and their place. And that is just how this goes. And if you look back to even medieval times and before medieval times, each one of these regions, like the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, had been established by people coming and conquering an area and then living there and bringing their grapes and planting them and bringing their recipes and their language and their culture. And lots of people have had influence over this, what now is the Republic of Italy with its 20 regions. Now, the reason they can't understand each other is because all these dialects. And I think there's really only like 300 grapes. And we call them 1,000 different things because in every different province, we have a different name for it. Now, up in the north, okay, it is very well-to-do, and there is a lot of banks, and they have money and fashion. Milan is there, and you know it's very sophisticated, and the Alps are there, and it's nice and cool, and so we have grass up in those beautiful pastures, and the cows make milk, and there's butter. And down in the south, we don't have nice, cool green pastures with cows and butter. It's very different. And so in the north, there's wealth. And in the south, well, it's the south, you know? I mean, just saying, right? And it is what it is. And don't forget, in the south, we do actually, though, have the real mafia. And I hate to even say that word, but, you know, it's true. And don't you even forget that these folks are the ones that really actually run that thing. And you know, just saying, a little humor. So in the north, we have lakes and beautiful forested mountains and palaces and beautiful piazzas and yachts and beauty, just so amazingly gorgeous and sophisticated, wealthy lifestyle. And we got some lakes down in the south too. They just look a little different, okay? And we got some water buffaloes down there. And down in the south, people are much poorer. There are more poor people down there, a lot of poor people down there. And then, you know, they call them peasants and all that, but whatever. So I'm hungry. I want to eat that water buffalo, but I can't because we need them for the cheese, okay? And by the way, we make some of the best cheese, the fior di latte, the buffalo mozzarella cheese from those water buffalo milk. And it's pretty darn incredible. Now, just again, I want to paint a picture of the north versus the south, okay? And it's some humor, and it's also a little bit of truth to the equation as well, so that we can get a fun and funny picture and more realistic, tongue-in-cheek version of what Italy's all about. Now, we're going to get into some of the very more serious classifications and understanding the system of classifying wines in Italy. Okay, what we have is a thing called the DOC. But when we started and created the Republic of Italy back in 1861, we had no regulations. There was no government guarantee of authenticity or quality or origin of wines, but eventually they had some kind of a guarantee of authenticity, that it was really from there, but no guarantee of quality. But in 1930, a very intelligent Minister of Agriculture was given the task of creating the first two classifications. 1930. In 1930, he created Vini Tipici, typical wines. And they had three very sketchy indications in that classification: fine wines, superior wines, and special wines. Well, that's pretty random, and no very controlled classifications or description, but that's what it was back in 1930. But don't worry. And the second classification there was Vini senza nessuna indicazione, and that's wines without any indication or regulation, like the table wine, the Blanc, that kind of thing. In 1963, the DOC was actually created by a senator, and the senator was named Paolo de Sanna, and he modeled it after the AOC in France, the Appellation Contrôlée in France. And because that system seemed to work very well, and it guarantees you that wines from this place have to be made from these kinds of grapes, and guarantees the authenticity and the quality levels. Like you may know in France, like for example in Burgundy, you have the village wine, and then the Premier Cru, and then above that, the Grand Cru. And so levels of quality and guarantee of grape and location and all of those things. So in 63, the Senator de Sana created the DOC, and they had wine with no designation. They had back then DOS, simple designation of origin, and a DOC, a controlled designation of origin, and the DOCG was a super high quality, they said, that had a guarantee of, these were just like Grand Cru, if there was such a thing. All right, now in 63, the regional wine law was established to define yields and grape varieties and geographical boundary. It has to be from here. It can only be these grapes, and we can only blend these other grapes, and the vinification techniques, and what the alcohol levels must be, and what the yields can be. In other words, you cannot overcrop and harvest too many grapes because it'll be watered down. Those controls were put in place to align quality levels of the wines of Italy, and they were actually quite effective. So the first designated actual DOC, and that's this level right here, and it's called a Denominazione di Origine Controllata, controlled area of origin, with very strict regulations for the boundaries of the grapes, the yields, the winemaking, and all of those things. Lots of controls and rules. All right. That was created. The first DOC was Vernaccia di San Gimignano, a white grape, a white wine in Tuscany. And the others were Ischia, an island off of Naples, and Frascati in Rome. Wow. Okay. Not very many people know that. But some bottles actually have been bearing a fascetta or facetta, depending on where your dialect is, and that is that little, can be green or pink label over the top or around the neck that has DOC or DOCG printed on there, and a control number, and all of that legal and efficient proof that it's a DOC or DOCG. And in 1980, Brunello di Montalcino and Vino Nobile di Montepulciano became the first two DOCG wines. Okay, and then what is DOCG? Well, that is Denominazione di Origine Controllata e Garantita. Well, because hey, for a little extra money, I will guarantee this wine is a really good, high quality wine for you, right? Okay, but really, and that is kind of what ended up happening. Back when I was studying for my exam for the Quartermaster Sommeliers in 2006, there was only 25 DOCG wines in all of Italy. And today there are 77. And I think they might have added 2 more while we were sleeping. Just saying, because they just keep adding more and more now. I'm joking. They did not. But they could have. And beware, tonight they might add 2 more. And so what we have here is the bottom layer of quality is just generic wine, table wine, vino di tavola. Vino di tavola. You don't even have to have a vintage year. You don't have no restrictions on grape varieties or sourcing or blending or any of that stuff. And this is, it's not bad wine. It can be delicious wine. This is the stuff that's in the flask, or in the trattoria, or you can get for a couple of euros in a cafe or a trattoria in Italy. And it's just simple wine, but it's probably very delicious, and it goes very well with the food because, as we know, village wines, the everyday drinking wine of the people, it's part of the diet, it's part of the culture, and wow, they can be quite delicious. Then the next quality level is DOC. We just talked about it. And the very top of the pyramid is DOCG. Well, what's this IGT? Well, what happened, Antinori had gone to France and brought back grapes and planted Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah and Merlot and even Chardonnay too, but mostly those red French varieties. And in Tuscany, near the sea, and was blending some Italian grapes with these French grapes and growing what we call continental or international varieties. They're not from Italy. They're international. They came from somewhere else. He brought them there. Well, they are not listed in the DOC. To have a DOC label from that place, you couldn't add Syrah or Merlot or Cabernet Franc or those grapes and sell your wine as DOC or DOCG because they're not permitted. Those laws had not been changed. But the guy's making incredible wine. And Tignanello was the very first, and this gave birth to the Super Tuscan movement, and that was really actually the very first Super Tuscan wine. Now there are so many, and like Solaya and Ornalaya and Arcanum, and like some beautiful Super Tuscan blends from international grapes being grown in Italy. But how are you can't, if you can't leave it as a DOC wine, you got to declassify it down to Vino di Tavola. Well, you're never going to get $100 for a bottle of Vino di Tavola. People won't pay it. They don't understand it. It was just too impossible for him to make his money back on these wines that cost a lot to plant and make because they're super high quality. So the Minister of Agriculture at the time, Goria, had a great idea. They worked together. In 92, Goria created this law that said, hey, we're going to create a new umbrella classification for all the stuff that doesn't fit into the DOC and DOCG classifications and laws, because they're very strict. But we want to encourage people to be creative and try things and make better wines and try new stuff. And so we want them to be able to sell it at the proper price. So they created the IGT, Indicazione Geografica Tipica. And really that is only based upon the geographic location and not so much what the grapes are. Well, this also allowed winemakers and growers in Italy to bring up grapes from other parts of Italy that don't belong in the DOC according to their rules. But I want to grow Grechetto here in Tuscany. Well, you cannot grow Grechetto in Tuscany. You can't sell it as a DOC, but I can make a really good one. And so I sell it as an IGT. So now it's not just Super Tuscan wines that are IGT. Anybody anywhere in Italy that's growing a grape that really is not part of the DOC in their place can sell their wines under the IGT. So I spent a lot of time on that, but I think it's really important because this is the ultimate foundation of all of the classifications, wine laws and rules that cover Italy. And I wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable with that. Okay, so we've got the DOCG as the top of the line. There's 77. The DOC, there's currently 380, but I'm sure there's one or two somewhere that we're not finding, but they exist. And then there's 175 at least IGT wines throughout Italy, and some are in the process of being ratified. So we'll say 175 plus. Vino di Tavola, hey, drink it, make it, enjoy it. All right, so here is a list of the 77 DOCGs in all of Italy. And I know it's tiny and there's a lot, and I didn't put it up here to make you really, work hard. The websites where these are available are certainly available for all of you online, and I encourage you to go online. But I'm going to say it's very difficult to find all 77 because most of the websites are outdated and this thing's changing so quickly. I liked, webfoodculture.com because they seem to come up with a very current and complete list. And there it is, the 20 regions and the DOCGs in each region. I thought it would be interesting to point out that, as we said, we're talking about, so many thousand hectoliters of wine. And what are the regions? Who's producing the most? And are they producing white or red? Well, Veneto is producing the most wine of any of the 20 regions. And it looks like, wow, it's like 3/4 white wine and 1/4 red wine in the Veneto. Well, that makes sense because there's an ocean of Prosecco and lots of Pinot Grigio and things like that there up in the north by the Alps. in Apulia, down in the south of Italy, on the boot heel tip where it's much hotter. Like that's the fruit basket of all of Europe down there. They're growing a lot more red grapes and they're making more red wines. And then interesting to see Piemonte, not that much production, but they're making a lot of dollars. They're much more expensive wines. It's kind of like Napa Valley is to the rest of California. But here, this is a really interesting chart because this is based on the quality level of those levels I was talking about. Now, in the European Union, in order to sell your Italian wines to other countries within the European Union, you must use the EU classifications, and there are two. There are really two, DOP and Vino, okay? Now, the DOP includes the IGP, that's IGT. The one, DOC, DOP, same. IGT, IGP, same. But for the European Union, they just call it one letter different. It's produzione rather than controllata, the word. So the initials are different. And then there's vino. So there's wine without a designation, and these two fall under wines with a designation for the EU. That's why that's up there. But look, Veneto has the largest amount of classified wine. Look at all that. In the green, that's classified wines. And the red is not classified, Vino di Tavola. So the Veneto has the really low amount of Vino di Tavola considering so many million hectoliters, okay? Wow. And then look at Apulia, or Puglia, down in the south, okay? Yeah, a lot of wine, but most of it is the Vino di Tavola level, not DOC or IGT. Interesting, okay? Just interesting. Now, the slide here shows you the Vernaccia di San Gimignano grapes. And Vernaccia di San Gimignano is a DOCG. It's in Tuscany. It's a white wine DOCG from a white wine grape. We're making white grape, white wines. And it is a DOCG. And the reason I'm putting this here is this is one of the reasons that I can really point out easily to you all why learning Italian and Italian grapes and Italian viticulture and wine is so incredibly difficult, because here it is, the DOCG of Vernaccia, the grape of San Gimignano, the village, and it's DOCG. Well, what is this Vernaccia? Because there are 9 Vernaccias. Yeah, not just that one. And here's the original Vernaccia di San Gimignano that we all know and love. Well, right next door in the region, the Marche, there's a red grape called Vernaccia della Serpatrona. And that makes a sweet red sparkling wine, nothing like the white wine from Vernaccia di San Gimignano. And there's one up in Verona, the Vernaccia della Verona. And then there's also the Vernaccia Pergola Aleatico, and that makes it a red wine. So white wine, red grape, white grape, they're all called Vernaccia. What is this Vernaccia? Making me crazy. I can't understand. Well, that's one of the things. But here's what it is. It's like a slang, the word Vernaccia. It means like homeboy, our guy, the neighbor, from our neighborhood, on our street, it's the local grape of my neighborhood, which we call our local guy, that's our Vernaccia. And it means in the vernacular of this region or this dialect, that is the local guy or girl, okay? And so you can understand now we're provincial again. And then that creates so many that it gets confusing. But hey, job security for sommeliers. This is what we get to learn so that we can teach others and share with others so that it's not so confusing for them. And so that helps us to understand the premise and lay the groundwork and the foundation for this class and wines of Italy in general. And now we can begin the actual kind of armchair adventure for you through the north of Italy. And we're going to hit these regions one by one. Liguria, then we're going to go to Val d'Aosta, then Piemonte, Lombardy, Trentino, then the Veneto, then Friuli-Venezia Giulia, and then down to Emilia-Romagna, and then we're going to finish there. And the next class Class 2 will be Tuscany and the south, and we'll do the south in an hour or two. Okay, so Liguria is our first region, and it is an area where they have the steepest non-terraced vineyards in the world. They're not terraced, and they're the steepest vineyard in the world in Liguria, and they're growing Pigato there. It is incredibly interesting to see that, you know, Italians, they're pretty creative. And, you know, as Italians, we all think we're the best chefs and the best artists and the best, you know, musicians and inventors and the best lovers and all that stuff. But, you know, if you ever say no to us, we will have a tantrum, and we're very emotional and we're very passionate. And, you know, well, we do some things pretty good, but we're funny sometimes. But this guy, leave it to him to create a monorail out of a lawnmower motor and a bunch of camera tripods that are holding the thing up. And let me tell you something, that's an e-ticket like nothing they ever had at Disney. That thing scared the crap out of me. I was holding on with my arms and wrapped my legs around it, and the little car on the back is going gung, 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 gung. And it's kind of rickety, and oh my God, it was a thrill. But those steep slopes are so intensely steep, we've got to find a way to get the grapes up to the winery and to get our materials and water and all the things we need to down to where the grapes are. So a very ingenious, inventive thing. Now that was located over here in this area by the Cinque Terre. So here, I love this. This is the map of Liguria. Now this is the Italian Riviera, right? Where this border starts the French Riviera. It goes on over there. But by San Remo, okay, we've got this area here this is incredible. We're going to spend some time on it in a few minutes. The Rossese, the Dolce Acqua. And Dolce Acqua, this area right here in Rossese, is a red grape and a white grape, and they are very historical. And then you've got, as you start to travel south, you got San Remo. And that is the kind of gateway to the Riviera di Ponente and the Riviera Liguria di Ponente. Now, in that area, we're growing a lot of Pigato and Vermentino, this yellow area here. Okay, and then as you head south, you've got Polcevera, you've got the Tiguglio and Colline di Levanto, Colle di Luni, and the Cinque Terre, this little area right here. So that is Liguria, and wow, what a beautiful area, Cinque Terre. Oh my gosh, I wish we would have went there sooner, because now it's so crowded, it's not even cool. But it's a pretty amazing spot. There's a hiking trail that goes through all the 5 lands, the Cinque Terre, the 5 lands. And here are the DOCs. There are these areas, those areas that I just showed you on the map, these areas right here, and the kind of grapes and wines that come from there. Now, as I told you, the Riviera Liguria di Ponente is very famous for Pigato and Vermentino. And this area down at the end here, on the northernmost area that goes pretty far inland, and that's important, we'll know in a minute, I'll tell you, is the Rossese di Dolce Acqua. That one we're going to pay attention to, okay? And down here in the Cinque Terre, yeah, we're growing, you know, white grapes and all kinds of things. And here you are, what are we growing? We're growing Pigato in Cinque Terre on those not terraced, steep slopes. Now, there are areas in Liguria that are terraced because they're so steep to the ancient grapes that would have washed off the mountain if they didn't build rocky terraces over time. Now, this is a story that I wanted to tell you all because it's a really fun story for me. Laura Asquero was a lady. She was the grandma. She passed away. And her daughter, Laura, now runs the winery, and her daughter, Bianca, and her husband. Now, Laura Asquero, I tasted a wine in San Francisco at Rose Pistola, a Ligurian restaurant, and I fell in love with this wine, this Pigato wine. And I was running the global wine program for Disney worldwide at the time. And my home base was in Napa Rose Restaurant in Southern California. And I said, man, I got to get this from my restaurant. This Pigato, Laura Scaras, amazing. But I had to go to Italy and make the deal because they only imported just a tiny amount. So I went over there and I met the grandma, Laura, and she was quite elderly at the time. And I would refer to her lovingly as a little old lady at the time. Okay. And she was wonderful. I fell in love with her. And so I asked her, I'm going to try to make this quick, but it's a cool story to me. I asked her, well, I would love to import your wines to the United States, a direct buy, direct drops. And I need to know what kind of price can you give me so I'll know if I can afford to do it or not. And she said, well, who do you work for? I said, no. I want to know, can I bring pallets and how many and what will it cost me if I ship 3-4 pallets at a time? And you know, we're trying to work out a deal. Well, who do you work for? No, I can't tell you. I need to know the deal first. And she's getting very agitated and aggravated at me because I won't tell her who I work. I'm not telling her I'm working for Disney because she's going to charge me more, okay? And or might. And so I'm trying to make it as honest but shrewd deal as I can. I want them to make money, but I don't want to get gouged. I want the wines. She says, okay. And she tells me the price. And I am so happy because it's a good, fair price. And we make a great deal. And she asks me, well, so now, who do you work for? And when I told her Disney, she got up and started dancing. She was dancing and she was happy. And she was just carrying on and having a great time. And she said, in broken English and Italian, she told me, now I have done everything in my life I could ever dream to do. And if the God takes me tomorrow, it's okay, because they sold their wine to the Pope before, to the Vatican, okay? And these are great wines. And they have their wine at the Vatican. And she says, and now I sold my wine to Mickey Mouse. And the Pope and the Mickey Mouse, and now I'm so grateful and I'm so happy. It's just like she was on a cloud. Okay, so, and you know, all Italians love 3 things, and this, please don't take offense, it's a joke. They love their mama, they love the Pope, and they love a Mickey Mouse. I'm just saying, man, come on. And so what a fun thing. And so we ended up having the Pigato from Laura Scaras at Disney, and people loved the wines, and it was fantastic. Okay, sorry that took so long, but I thought it was a cool story. All right, now, here is the Rossese, the Dolce Acqua. And there's white and red, but this has a tremendous history. And there in that region that I showed you, the farthest north that goes inland extensively, this picture up here, now if you can't see the picture because the gallery, you can drag and drop your gallery so you can see, you know, move that picture of me anywhere you want to. But this area is hillsides, inland, okay, crazy, scenic, amazing. The commune of Barolo or Bajarado, however you want to pronounce it, and I've heard both in Italy, fine. But it's a mountaintop community, and there are vineyards around it, and it's inland. So the important thing is that this grape, Rossese, is a fickle grape, man, and it demands well-drained soil. It needs steeper hillsides. The grape has got a delicate, thin skin, kind of like a Pinot Noir, that can easily develop botrytis. And if it's too close to the coastline, you're not going to have good grapes growing. And it was in very short supply in Liguria, and we don't want exposure to the breeze. So inland and drier area, warmer, was really good for this red grape to grow. Now, these folks have a tremendous history because especially there's one particular winery there that I'll show you a slide of in a moment, that the Tenuta and Fosso have Rossese vines that were planted in 1888. 1888. They still got old vine, white grape, old vines from there. And these are the Rossese red, and then there's a Rossese Bianco, but they're not related, okay? They're not related, but these guys are absolutely historical. The old man at this winery that I was just telling you about has put in 77 harvests. Okay, and Alessandro Anafaso, 77 harvests. The guy is 87 years old. He's been working in the field since he was 10. Okay, and they grow in this particular kind of flesh, which is sedimentary rock consisting of strata of marl and sandstone, alternating marl and sandstone, and in between there's some clay here and there. And they only ferment the wines with native yeast. The Vino Bianco from that particular winery, which is also organic, they're organically grown. So you got old vines from the 1880s. You got organically grown and producing with native yeasts. And they also aged that white wine in acacia wood barrels, big 500-liter barrels for 10 to 11 months. Very unique, very different kinds of wines. Not your everyday run-of-the-mill stuff. I thought it would be interesting to introduce you to that. Now let's move up to the Val d'Aosta. The Val d'Aosta, the valley that goes up into the Alps from Piemonte. And well, this area is wild, okay? And, you know, back when I was coming up, when they were teaching us Italy, they're like, well, you'll never see any wine from Val d'Aosta, so we're not even going to cover it. And they just go right over it. And, hey, not only is this one of the most scenically beautiful places in all of Italy that you could go to, it has very unique wines at very reasonable prices. And where are we exactly? Well, there's this valley that is carved up into the Alps, ending up at the very top at the highest vineyards right below Mount Blanc. Well, very famous mountain. Okay, well, right below that, the valley ends up going down into and opening up into Piemonte. Okay, now in this area, we have the DOCs on the right and a map where you just saw where Mount Blanc is here, going down the valley out into Piemonte. And you got the Donas, and then Arnad, and then Chambab, Nus, Aosta, and La Salle, and Morgex. And so what I think you will find is there are a very small portion of table wines and a very large portion of classified wine coming from Val d'Aosta. And they are still pretty darn good prices and some very cool wines, because remember, we're up in the high mountains. We're in high elevation, high altitude. They're producing, you know, like almost 10,000 hectoliters and quite a bit of stuff, but they're very tiny little vineyards and small production stuff. Here are some of the wines. You know, they've got different grapes and places. Here's Peccato again from up there, but they really produce some pretty compelling wines. And not only that, but the wines, most of them are grown up on pergolas, up on a high pergola above the ground, up on the steep slopes of this place. And it's really quite amazing. This area was really annexed by the Romans after originally being settled and planted by a Celtic tribe, the Salassi, okay, and you know, founded in 24 BC. That's a long time, okay. And then in the 5th century, the Roman Empire kind of created the Val d'Aosta, named that, and then it was conquered, and then it was part of the Burgundian and Frankish kingdoms. And Aosta province was formed from the part of Torino up to the north in 1927. So really, the Val d'Aosta as we know it really was more since 1927, but really fully created in 45 and recognized in a single DOC was started in the first one in 1985. Sorry, it seems a little confusing, but we're way up, 900 to 1,200 meters above sea level. We have a beautiful castles and outposts. And remember, it's historical, and this is the medieval landscape, and it hasn't changed much since all those days. They are growing a number of grapes, both white and red. Moscato grows very well up at the highest elevations there. Tourette is a red grape that grows at higher elevation in the middle of the valley area. And this is an area where it's got an incredible castle, man. The thing is totally scenic and amazing. And Tourette Superior Eleve, the high slopes and the steep area is really quite a delicious wine. It is kind of spicy, and it goes really good with the cuisine from this area, which is lots of soups and stews, and like a thing like a French onion soup, or a soup with cabbage and bread and cheese, or stews and all those kinds of things is what you eat up there, because you're up in the Alps and it's cold. Look how steep and how amazing. All right. And it is incredibly visually beautiful, clear, pristine, rushing alpine rivers and stream coming down. And the area ends up undulating down into Piemonte. Now we're in Piemonte. Oh boy. Okay. So in Piedmont, we are at the foothills of the Alps, and that's what Piedmont means. Piemonte certainly means the Pia of the Monte. That's the foot of the mountain, and where we really are known for some super high quality, expensive wines. The white grapes are Moscato, Cortese, Arnese, the most popular. There's even some Chardonnay and Sauvignon up there. And the red grape, the king of all red grapes for sure, is Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo, named from the nebbia, the little fog that lays in those misty vineyards and hills in the fall. Barbera, Dolcetto, and Bracchetto are also very popular and make quite a bit of very good wine. Barbera, Nebbiolo, Dolcetto comprise 65% of all the wines there, and Moscato, Cortese, and Arnese are the three white grapes that, along with Malvasia and Favorita, can contribute to 35% of the wines are white wines. Thank you to Wine Folly for that slide. Moscato, as I was saying, very famous because, hey, Moscato d'Asti, it's a sparkling wine. It's kind of sweet. It's sparkling. It's made in a Charmat method, and it's in every supermarket in this country. There is an ocean of it, a lot of it, right? And it's off dry and sparkling and pretty easy to drink. And then there's Cortese. Wow, now these grapes are compelling. Here is a cluster of some old vine Cortese. And Cortese is pretty light in body. It's medium plus to high in acidity. It's a bone dry wine, and it has a lot of fruity flavors. It's red apple and lime, and it can have some herbaceous characteristics, and not weedy or bell peppery, but like herbs and spicy and a little bit of nuttiness as well. It's really good with pesto. It's good with anything from the ocean, and also some crunchy green vegetables, because of that slight herbal component. Really pairs very well with Gavi. Where are we in Gavi? Cortese is the grape from Gavi. Gavi is here, is the map of the areas, the communes within Gavi. Now, it's a DOCG wine. And there are these different communes. There's Gavi di Gavi and just plain old Gavi. I'm teasing. But there are several different, and one of the very popular, more expensive bottlings that is really got a lot of nobility is La Scolca. And this is the bottle. These were the grapes at La Scolca, the harvest there last year. So the current vintage, these are the grapes. I think this one right here is in your glass right there. I don't know. And so here are the big dogs. Okay, when you talk about Piemontese wines, the wines of Piemonte, you're talking about Barolo and Barbaresco. And certainly there are many, many more, but these are the ones that command all the attention. These are the ones that get the high scores. These are undisputably the king and the queen. They say Barolo is the king and Barbaresco is the queen. When I was studying in 2006 for my exam, there were how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 DOCGs in Piemonte. Today there are 18, and they're applying for 2 more. Wow. Okay, so they just make it harder for you to pass your test. I don't know. That's why. No, I'm teasing. Because the world of wine is growing, and their qualities are improving. And not only that, but we're making people aware of wines they never heard of or tried before. Here's a map of the region. You can see Gavia is that area on the right-hand side. And then you have all this big area here from Moscato d'Asti. This is the area for Brachetto, that sparkling sweet red wine, delicious with chocolate and chocolate dipped strawberries. And then here, Barbaresco and Barolo. The Tenero River that actually flows through Barbaresco, and the city of Alba. Anybody ever heard of white Alba truffles? Yeah, wow. This is the biggest one ever harvested, or at least ever recorded. That's the biggest truffle I've ever seen on that velvet pillow right there, just saying. And they use pigs to smell them and root them up, and dogs too. All right. Now here are your two communes, regions, actually, regions. And in the region are communes. Okay. So there are 4 communes in Barbaresco. There are 15 communes in Barolo. They are both using 100% Nebbiolo. And in Barolo, we'll go there first. One of the most beautiful and scenic area of vineyards and these beautiful castles that are now the wineries. And the rolling hillsides. It is a patchwork of hilltops and hillsides. And we're going to be growing our Nebbiolo on the south-facing slopes and the hilltops where they get the most sun. And on the north side, the east, and the west side, we'll grow Dolcetto and Barbera and Brachetto and other grapes. But the south, where the sun is at, is where the Nebbiolo will grow, because it will give it the most opportunity to get ripe and the highest quality. What an amazingly beautiful area. It's so scenic with the snow-capped mountains in the back. And here's that nebbia, the mist that blows in and hangs down over those vineyards in the fall. My hat is off to these two gentlemen who passed away in the last year. These are two of the greatest producers of Piemonte of all history, for sure. Mr. Bruno Giacosa, which is one of the few pictures I ever could find of him smiling, and Aldo Contorno. These were two of the greatest growers, producers, and winery owners of old traditional style Nebbiolo. And here are the new Turks. And both these guys are not kids, but they're the youngsters. Angelo Gaia and Roberto Borzio are what you would say is the younger ones that are following in the footsteps. They've both made 100-point wines, certainly. And here's a new young pup that you may have not heard of at all, Guido Folinari. Well, you heard of Folinari. They got money, so they can afford to buy some really good property that was existing with great soil. Look at the color of this soil, my God. And you can imagine the kind of grapes, high acid, amazing grape we can grow on that soil at Tenuta L'Illuminata. All right, so in Barolo, here are our classifications. All right, it follows the cru model of certainly Burgundy. And there are many similarities to Burgundy. Now, 100% Nebbiolo on Tortonian and calcareous soil, calcium, high, white, chalky calcium soils are there too, but mostly Tortonian and sandstone. All right. Now, if you want to age your Barolo, the Normale, just the regular Barolo, has got to age 38 months from November 1st, and a minimum of 18 of those months in the barrel. 38 months, okay, just for Normale. For Reserva, 62 months. 62 months aging and 18 in barrel, okay? There is a newer classification that tells you if it's a special subzone under a DOCG area, or if it's a single vineyard within that subzone, and that's the Menzione Geografica Aggiuntiva. And there is a Menzione Geografica Aggiuntiva e Vigna, and that's the single vineyards. Now, these got to be 100% grapes from that vineyard, hand harvested, vines minimum 7 years old, and the other classifications like alcohol and things are important. Here are the cru, the vineyards within the communes. In Barolo, these are a few of the communes, some of the most, well, to me, the most important ones are La Mora, and the vineyard that everybody knows in there is Brunate. That is split with the commune of Barolo itself. Then Castiglione Falletto, okay, Monforte d'Alba, Barolo, Serralunga d'Alba. Now in Italian, when you see that D and an apostrophe, it's not d'Alba. The D just goes into the word. That's how we pronounce it. So Serralunga d'Alba, right? And super famous vineyard within that commune is Falletto. And the Canubi vineyard, many of us have heard of or seen on a bottle of wine. And these are our cru. Just like in Burgundy, there's a vineyard, all right, inside of a village area, inside of the region. And there are three specific wine writers, Italians, and Galoni, Masnaghetti, and Ratti. These are like probably the three highly respected wine writers there in Italy that write these wines up of these places. And this is a cool list here of the vineyard sites. Now we're talking the actual vineyards within the communes, okay? And the ones in yellow are ones that all three of them agreed that these were the top of the top and superiore. All right, trying to get three Italians to agree on anything is like forget about it. Okay, but they agreed that Brunate, Cerquillo, and Rocche Castiglione are absolutely tops, and they, as you can see, they love these others, but those three, they, oh man, exceptional and superior, and so on and so forth. I thought that would be interesting. Here, this very psychedelic looking map quilt of vineyards within the communes. Just, I only put this on here to make your eyes go funny and to tell you that you can go as deep as you want. If you're a wine geek and you're into it, you can go deeper into Barolo and Barbaresco. I'm thinking as deep as you could ever go into Burgundy. You can do it here with these little blocks of fruit on hilltops and hillsides, and the higher quality and the way the wines age and the quality of the wines. They're going to age longer than we can. That's for sure. And if you're really into it, this is here for you. Certainly, if you want to pass your Master Sommelier exam, you need to be able to look at this map and understand exactly what it means and know a lot of those and memorize all of that stuff. But that, I wouldn't wish that on any of you. Actually, I want you to just be able to enjoy the wines, and then we can talk about it. Here is the Falletto vineyard in the commune of Serralunga, and wow, so you can get an idea of what harvest day is like over there. All right, now never mind all of that difficult stuff. I thought it would be important to put a couple of words from Barolo that we actually do use, and so that you can be fluent with them. And Sori or is a favored site, especially got a southern exposure, like I was saying, and a costa would be a very sunny southern site, steep as well. Brico and Brick are either the highest part of the slope at the top of the slope, not the top of the mountain, but the top of the slope, the highest part of the steep part, or the hilltop, or a steep vineyard. It can mean all three of those things. We call it a brico or a brick. The steep slope, the highest part of the steep slope, or the very top of the hill. Chinato is an aromatized wine that has botanicals and quinine added to it, and it is sweet and slightly bitter. It is like an Amaro, but it has a Barolo Nebbiolo base. And it was created by a doctor whose wife had passed away from a terrible disease, and he found that quinine was a very good cure for that. And to prevent anybody, he said, nobody in my family is ever going to die from this thing again, because we're going to drink this stuff. And it's pretty good stuff too. It's good with bittersweet chocolate. Let's move over from Barolo to Barbaresco. Barbaresco, oh, what a beautifully visually amazing area. Okay, so here is harvest day in 2001. Okay, and in 2001, some of you may remember that, you know, Angelo Gaia, back in 01, he made, it was a 100-point Costa Russi Barbaresco. And boy, back then they weren't so expensive. And we had magnums of that stuff at Napa Rose. Oh my gosh, they didn't live there very long, but that was pretty special. All right, so Here's the Tanaro River, which flows through that area of Barbaresco, and one of the most certainly scenically famous and recognizable spots there, right next to the river. And here is the vineyards, the two vineyard sites, the Costa Russi and the Sorie-Tilden. They're both have been 100-point wines more than once. Okay. And now, I'm not saying 100-point is everything, but if you think it's nothing, or if you think it's no big deal, try making one. Just saying. Yeah. So somebody said it was good. That's all. So now Barbaresco as opposed to Barolo. Okay, we got 100% Nebbiolo again. All right. And 35 to 40% of the annual production, okay, is less than Barolo, like 40% of what's produced in Barolo, less Barbaresco, and aging is less. And why? Because they think it's a little more elegant wine. Elegant and feminine aren't really words I would use for Nebbiolo, because this big, powerful, tannic beast, okay, but it's a little lighter, a little softer than the wines of Barolo because of the soils, I think. And 26 months and only 9 months in barrel. Remember, it was 18 months in barrel for Barolo, 26 months for Normale, only 50 months for Reserva Barbaresco, but it's still also 100% Nebbiolo. Now, there in Italy, we say Barolo is the king and Barbaresco is the queen. Barolo with fur and Barbaresco with feathers. And, you know, we just have a way of describing those types of things. But Barolo is really good with game birds. They're both really amazing with truffles. Well, that doesn't surprise me. If it grows together, it goes together. But Barbaresco can go really good with rabbit and quail and squab and guinea hen, especially because it's all dark meat bird. Now, let's scoot over the border to Lombardy or Lombardia because we need to drink some sparkling wine. Yeah, man, and we need a good deal on it too. Okay, so what we have here is a sparkling wine area inside of Lombardy. Now, Lombardy has Milan too and a lot of other places. But these wines are like 2/3 the price of champagne. And some are even like 1/3 the price of champagne. Very good deal for super high quality wines made in the Champenoise method, but you can't call it that because you can only say that in Champagne. You all know that. So we call it the Metodo Tradizionale or the Metodo Classico. It is where that second fermentation happens in the bottle and riddling the bottles and all of that. Okay, now here is, I like the little image of the Milan and the scooter there, but Milan is the capital of Lombardy, and they're making over 25 million cases annually. 25 million cases of wine, okay? And 20% at least is DOC quality. They are growing Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Bianco, and Trebbiano, which they call Lugana there. Those are your white grapes. And then they call they grow Nebbiolo, but they call it Chiavenesca, okay? Pinot Noir, which we call Pinot Nero in Italy, and red Muscat. Whoa, okay. So we've got the area of Valtellina up here where we're growing the Chiavenesca. And of course, you know, that is Nebbiolo. And then here's your Franciacorta sparkling wine area. Here are the DOCGs of Lombardy. Franciacorta DOCG. Wow, okay. And here's the one, Satin. Satin is only 5 atmospheres of pressure, okay? 5 bars, not 6. We all know that most sparkling wines have 6 atmospheres of pressure and 6 twists on that wire cage too. That's how I remember. Okay, well, Satin is 1 bar less, so they say it's just a little softer. Okay, long story there, but we're not going to take time for it. The Otrepo Pavese DOCG is made in Metodo Classico. This is a sparkling wine area, but it's what they call the other Po, the old area of the Po River, ancient, highest quality, where the grapes were first being grown to make these beautiful sparkling wines, and they grow Pinot Noir down there, and it does very well. And then up in Valtellina Superiore, where we are growing Nebbiolo, and it's called Chiavenesca. All right, there are these Nebbiolo-based blends from 6 villages, and they can be from any of those 6 villages to be the DOCG, Valtellina Superiore. However, what's cool about one of them, Staggia Fassali, is that half of that commune is actually across the border in Switzerland. So wine grown in Switzerland can be part of an Italian DOCG, only in that one village. I thought that was interesting to know. And a wine called Sforzato, DOCG, or Sforzat, is a repast. So what happens, we put the grapes in the press, and we press them out, okay, and in the fermenter, right, and you press out the juice, and then we leave the skins and the must, and then we put new grapes in there on top of the old grapes with the old must, so that we're concentrating a double concentration, if you will, to make a more intense, more concentrated wine, more intense wine. And we do that in a couple areas of Italy, but certainly, and here we're in Valtellina. Here's a good bottle of Valtellina. Those are the Nebbiolo grapes with some good Alpine cheeses up there. I thought a nice little image would give you a nice party atmosphere. And as you can see, we are up near the Alps, and these are very, very old areas, a lot of monastic buildings, and the vines struggle. But let's go to Trentino-Alto Adige, because now we're really in one of the most amazingly beautiful areas of all of Italy, up in the Dolomite, limestone and granite Alps, carved up in there, where these valleys were carved out by glaciers eons ago and scrubbed. And then over time, the wind and rain has weathered all the mountains and rolled down all that gravel and sand and bits of rock to create benches on the sides of the valleys where we are going to grow our grapes. Now, this is an area, Alto Adige, we've got, like, I don't know, 1,500 acres of Pinot Grigio. We got 1,300 acres of Chardonnay, okay? 950 acres of Pinot Noir. There's a little Lagran and Schiava there, but there's 1,300 acres as of, well, this is a little outdated, back in 2011, and it hasn't increased too much because there's no place to plant. It's the valleys, and you'll see it's limited. But if you think about 13,000 acres, the size of Manhattan Island in New York is 14,500 acres. So that's it. And there ain't really any more land to plant because it's a steep, steep, steep mountains. But what's really cool in this area, especially in Trento and Trento Dock, in those DOC up in the Ciambra Valley, we're making sparkling wines in the Methado Classico. Now, we got wines that are like half the price of champagne and growing, and this is really exciting for me. I hope you folks like it too. Dolomite limestone rock, high altitude. The vines have to be grown up on pergolas. They don't allow irrigation. You're growing Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. Huh, do those sound familiar? Yeah, that's the only 3 grapes we can grow in Champagne. They can also grow some Pinot Blanc there, but traditionally and typically, these are the grapes that the wines can be made of, and the aging requirements are the exact same as in Champagne too. Non-vintage, 15 months on the lease. Vintage Champagne and vintage Trento Dock, 24 months, 2 years. And then Reserva, 3 years. Okay. Now, here's a couple producers that I like. I just think they're good. I'm not, I work for a wine company. We don't represent these wines, but I thought you might want to try some. They're good deals. And Ferrari makes a really good Brut Rosé. They won the award for the Sparkling Wine Producer of the Year at the 2017 Champagne and Sparkling Wine World Championships. That was a big deal. Okay, Ferrari, the Brut Rosé. It's only $27. It's pretty darn good. Just saying. Cesarina, the Sforza Reserva is $30. Maso Martis is a good producer that I like very much. They're certified organic as well. Maso Martis, and Altimasi. These guys all make a pretty darn good wine. Now look at this. Okay, you got that. The Alps with the glacier still hanging up there on that guy. Okay, steep slopes. Look at that village. And now look here. The pergolas growing up above the ground on the super steep rocky soils. I mean, I want to go hang out in that village and see what kind of salamis and cheeses they're making over there, right? In the Alpine. And now under the pergolas, here is your Chardonnay grapes hanging out. This is what's underneath. Above, that's what it looks like. Below, Wow, it's a whole nother world under there. It's amazing. Okay. And I just have to say, you know, so scenically beautiful and amazing. This is a place that I would recommend you go visit. And if you can't, that's okay. Just stay right there in your living room and we'll bring the wine country to you. Huh? Just saying. All right. So now we're going to move to the Veneto. Here's another one of those psychedelic posters that, boy, this didn't look like this 10 years ago. So many new DOCG and all of that thing going on. But this is the region of the Veneto. These are the DOCs and the DOCGs. I only put this on here to show you how diverse it is and how amazing it's become. But I didn't want you to make your eyes go funny. Let's talk about the Veneto. Okay. The region of the Veneto, here's the old traditional flag. And, you know, with each of the provinces that are in there. And we got Glera. It used to be called Prosecco. Well, because it made sense that the grape you used to make Prosecco was called Prosecco. But, you know, Italians, right? We just, that's too easy. We want to make it harder for you to pass your exam, so we changed the name to Glera. No, there's another reason, and I'll tell you why. It's even worse. Okay, Garganega or Garganega, I've heard it pronounced both ways. That's the white grape for Soave. Pinot Grigio, 12%. Merlot, there's a lot of Merlot growing up in there too. And Corvina, we're going to talk a lot about that. All right, here we go. In the Veneto, now there's 14 DOCGs. All right, Soave Superiore, Recioto di Soave, Amarone della Valpolicella, and Recioto della Valpolicella are DOCG. Just Amarone is DOC. What? Okay, but that just happened. All right, Bardolino, Gambalara, and 2 Proseccos now, DOCG. New guys, Colle Eugene, Flor d'Orancio, Laison, Piave, Montello Rosso, Bagnoli Friularo, not Friulano, and Colle di Conigliano Rosso. That's a red wine produced in the same area where we're producing our Prosecco. The thing I love about the Veneto is it's got 2 of the most romantic cities in the world. Yeah. And I mean, Verona, all right, in the Veneto. Well, there was a great story about 2 young lovers. Huh? How romantic is that in Verona? Okay. And in Venice. And I would say, if you've never been to Venice, please, please, please go and see Venice before you leave this earth. It is a place that you must see. It's amazing. It's incredibly beautiful. It's a wonder of the world, this floating city. And not only that, as the water's rising, eventually it's going to go away. And, you know, it's so fun and cool. They don't even allow automobiles. There's no cars allowed in Venice. You walk everywhere. And don't worry, if you get hurt and we need an ambulance, we'll bring a bicycle for you. Yeah, that's the ambulance in Venice. Anyway, so some of the grapes we got there: Pinot Grigio, Pinot Bianco, Garganega for Soave, Glera for Prosecco, okay? And then, you know, Trebbiano, of course, because that's everywhere in Italy, Verduzzo, Vespaiolo, Moscato, and Thai. We'll cover that in a minute. And then red grapes: Corvina, Rondinella, Molinara, and Corvignone, and Negrara. These are the grapes that can be put into the Amarone. Okay, there's Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, and don't forget Raboso. Okay, here are some of the most important. Let's condense it down to what I think, just for today, are the most important areas we want to talk about. Soave, which is a white wine area. Okay, Valpolicella, this purple area here, and Valpolicella Classico. And that's where the Amarone comes from. We're right next to Lake Garda. And in between Lake Garda and the Valpolicella is Bardolino. Boy, we sold an ocean of that stuff at my dad's restaurant in the early 1960s in LA, Matteo's restaurant. And then here is our Prosecco over here, coming out of the mountains from the steep area down into the flat area where the soils have all washed down from the mountains down into the flat. And Valpolicella, over 4 million cases a year. Valpolicella is a nice, soft, fruity, easy drinking red wine that doesn't have a big bite to it. It's really easy, good, everyday drinking wine, village style, kind of soft and pretty. All right. And it can be blended from Corvina, Rondinella, Molinara, Negrara, and Corvignon. Now, they also do a repass, like the Sforzato that I told you about, okay? And they do the same exact thing with the must from the last fermentation with new grapes and doubly concentrating the wines. They also make a Recioto. Recioto wine is a rich, bittersweet wine made from dried Pasito grapes. Pasito grapes are dried. Now, they're growing them up on pergolas. Some people actually grow down on trellis wires, but most of this stuff is grown like this. Okay, Corvina grapes are grown up on there. Okay, these are the guys at Masi. All right, this is the 2014 harvest. That was a super high quality vintage. And 16, oh my God, amazing, 16. And so we're picking the Corvina. Now, Corvina tend to have these little wings at the top and a center cluster that hangs down. Back in the day, they used to clip those two ears and dry those for the Amarone and leave the center cluster hanging there to get riper for the Valpolicella. All right, so now when we make Amarone, we're using partially dried grapes. We dry them in the shade, in the shed, over straw mats, or well, all kinds of ways now. But we're not drying them until they're dried out raisins. We're only drying them until like a third of the water has gone out and they're just kind of squishy. All right. And some Italian a long time ago said, it looks like a baby's ear. Whatever. But, and they said, and the word was orche. And so they said, orchette, Recioto is the word they ended up with that has some reference to the baby's ear. And you can see they're just kind of squishy. They're not like dried up like raisins, but we got red fruit and black fruit flavors in these grapes when they're just fresh. Then we dry them and we get prune and date and fig flavors in them. So we end up with all of these flavors. And Amarone della Valpolicella is absolutely the most complex wine in all of Europe for sure. And one of the highest alcohol wines because it can easily be 16%. So we're like, it's got to be a minimum of 45 to 95% Corvina. Yeah. So Corvignon can substitute for up to 15% of that Corvina, so they can blend both together. And then you're allowed to put 5 to 30% Rondinella, and then up to 25% of the other red grapes, maximum of only 10% of each of those 4 grapes that I said before. Here are Corvina on the left and Corvignon on the right. They're very similar, but they're slightly different. And you can see the Corvignon makes a much bigger cluster, more grapes, and you'll get a lot more hectares per hectoliter or tons per the acre. And this is what we're talking about and why we do this, okay? Now, when you harvest the grapes and they're fresh, and then we put them in the shade and not in the sun. We don't want sun affecting them. Then we dry them. And when you dry them 10, 16, 22, 30%, 37%, when they're dried up 37%, they end up looking like these grapes that are sitting on these straw where they have been drying for the last few months. And what happens is that these grapes have these 3 very diverse aromatic hydrocarbons. This is a little science here. The hydrocarbons are bound to the sugars in the grape, okay? And as you dry the grapes or as you age the wine, those hydrocarbons are released and they increase the aromas and flavors as the grapes dry and the sugars become more concentrated. I know that sounded confusing, but let's make it more simple. In case you were wondering what benzenoids and nor isopropanoids and terpenoids are, well, they're just aromatic hydrocarbons. They have significant construction of the flavors and aromas in the grape, okay? And they're the building blocks, basically, of the essential oils. And those are the things that give the essence, which will be flavors and aromas and those types of things in the grape. Now, like I said, they're bound to the sugars. And as you dry them, they really change. And the simple way of saying, well, when I dry it, it increases the aromas and flavors or changes the aromas and flavors. And there you go. In Soave, the next region over, we're growing the Garganega grape. and it is a beautiful area where it's very green and nice and fertile. But there are areas that are very rocky and not so fertile, and we can grow these grapes over the rocks, like in the center of the area called the Classico. And the center of the area, that's why it's called Classico, is the old middle of the area. The Classico isn't like extra aging. It is the center or the heart or the old original spot where they first planted. Well, you know, they plant on the best soils first, so that's the old original heart of the area. And then over the time, people plant more and more, and the growth spreads out from that area. But the Classico is still the heart, the middle, the center, the original spot. There's a castle of Soave, the Castello di Soave, on top of a hill in the center of the Classico. And that is a limestone and rocky hill. And you can see the little wall there, and the castle itself is built out of the stuff that's underneath. Well, there, Piero Pan has a bottling of the Soave called La Rocca that's from the 16 rows right next to the castle. And you're talking more rocky soil than anywhere down below it, because you're up on the top of the rocky mountain there where the castle is. And that wine is like liquid minerals and lime and green apple and fresh and crisp and amazingly high acid and killer. It's very compelling, and these are the grapes that go in it from the 16 rows up next to the castle. I thought that was a kind of a cool story as well. But here we go. We also make a sweet dessert wine from those grapes called Recioto di Soave, and it's a DOCG, and they're the grapes that we grow, and we dry them in the shade on the straw mats, just like we did with the Amarone. Let's move to Prosecco. In Prosecco, the original name of the grape was Prosecco, and a lot of people thought they changed the name to Glera so that they could raise the price on Americans and the world, you know, because the sparkling wines were increasing in price, and it would be a good, easy way to raise the price without really, but that's not actually valid. It's maybe a part of their thinking, of course, in the ultimate scheme of things. But the name Prosecco for the area, and then having the grape as the same exact name, created a situation, simply stated, where any area in the world could use that name, and they really want to protect the name. And so, as a measure, they created a DOC and changed the name of the grape to Glera. And we'll have a similar situation slightly when we get to Emilia-Romagna with Pignoletto, and we'll talk about that too. But what we have here is the grape Glera, grown on these beautiful, amazing green area. All right. These villages were elevated to DOCG: Conigliano, Valdobbiadene, and Colleasolani were elevated to DOCG in 2009. Well, hey, it's a DOCG. I got to charge more for that wine. It's a DOCG. Yeah, but it's the same wine I was buying yesterday. I was only paying $8 a bottle for, but okay, I get it. All right. And now that same ocean of wine brought in a hell of a lot more money. Well, one of the benefits of bringing in more money is look at the steep slopes and all the growth and the planting and the increase of the area, because, hey, we're going to sell a lot more wine. We need to plant a lot more of these Glera grapes and get them ripe. And so they did. There are very steep slopes. Most all of that farming is being done by hand, because you can't drive a tractor up and down those steep slopes. And harvesting is happening by hand. And Italians are very ingenuitive. So like I said, we don't have a monorail, but we've got a way of getting those grapes up to the winery from the very steep slopes, and we'll figure it out. The bad news is that with all of that money and all of that growth, that the Prosecco production end up taking a toll on the environment in this region, because the industry accounts for 74% of all the region's soil loss every year. Why? Because they just started stripping away mountainsides and planting grapes on super steep vineyards. And every time it rains, all that stuff just washed down to the valley. And I mean, it's a serious problem. So there's a couple of places you can read articles about this. And like I said, I don't endorse or oppose any causes. I'm just the messenger, but I think it's wise for us to know these types of things. And Right now, the Padua University in 2019 claimed that soil erosion was increasing at an alarming rate, and they did a big study on this. As a result, sciencenews.org wrote this article. Here's the link, and that Forbes magazine wrote a story, and here's the link about World Wine Heritage Sites. And this one is controversial because for every bottle of Prosecco, 4.4 kilos, that's 10 pounds of soil is lost. For every 10 pounds of soil for every bottle of Prosecco, that amounts to 400,000 tons of soil per year off of these slopes. Where is it going? Down into the river, down into the ocean. And it's taking with it fertilizers and pesticides and all that. Like you can imagine, it is going to really, it's already created a very tough situation. But look at what they've done. They've just cut swaths through the mountains and planting on the super steepest slopes of all. Like you can never do that in California. We're just the opposite, man. If you want to plant a vineyard in Napa or Sonoma, you got the Coastal Commission is going to take 10 years evaluating whether it's going to be okay. Like they go a little too far the other way. Somewhere in the middle is reason and common sense. But I understand why now, because you look at this problem here we have in Italy. Hey, they didn't intend to do this. They didn't think about that. But this is the situation that we end up with. And then, I mean, look at these super steep slopes, and they're beautiful to look at. I think, oh my God, I want to go there to see that. I want to go and try to pick grapes on that mountain. I got to tie myself off with a rope, or I'm going to slide down. And but I got to say that as beautiful as that is right there, there's a chance those vineyards, those vines aren't going to be there in 10 years because they're going to be washed down to the valley. Just saying, and that's not a good thing. So somewhere we figure it out over time. Now in the next region, Friuli-Venezia Giulia, we have an ocean of Pinot Grigio, man, in Friuli. And here we are in Friuli Grave, and the Grave means gravel. And here are the DOCs and DOCGs of this area in color. Now you got the Alps up here, and then it steps down. The river's running right through the middle where we're going down into the flatlands, okay, where there is beautiful vineyards stretching miles and miles. We've got the hills versus the plains. We got Pinot Grigio, Pinot Bianco, a lot of good Sauvignon Blanc, very aromatic coming from there. Now remember, we're in Friuli, okay? There's Chardonnay there, and then there's this grape Friulano. Well, it used to be called Tokai, and this is like, you can't write this. Okay, so the grape was called Tokai, and the people from Friulano, or Friuli, said, hey, I'm proud, I'm Friulian. I want my name on that grape, not some Hungarian name on a grape that we grow here in Friuli, so we're going to call it Friulano. Yes, wonderful. They changed the name from Tokai to Friulano, so they call it Thai. What? Are you kidding? They don't call it Friulano, they call it Thai. Just saying. So funny. So funny. A couple of interesting DOCGs, Romandolo, made from Verduzzo grapes, Colli Orientali, the Friuli Piccolit, yeah, pretty cool. And the Colli Orientali means the eastern hills. Orientali, the east, the Orient is the eastern, and the Colli is the hilltops or the hillsides. And don't forget Rosasso, okay, too, also. Here are some of the most beautiful Pinot Grigio grapes I have ever seen. And these folks at Benvolio, man, they are killing it. They are growing super high quality wines at a very, very low price. And if you've never tried it, I would say check it out because it's ridiculously inexpensive and very high quality and just classic. I think the way it's supposed to be: light, crisp, lemony, citrusy, aromatic, higher acidity, crisp and fresh and mouth-watering. But you know, the Pinot Grigio grape is not green. It is not red. It is not green. It has this bronze color, which leads to the name Pinot Gris, the gray or bronze shade, and same thing, Pinot Grigio in Italian, that it relates to the color. So in a glass of this wine, it tends to not have a real green hue. It has a copper or a little brassy secondary hue because of, look at the color of the skins, right? The longer they're with the skin, the more of that secondary hue you're going to get. The next village over from where this wine is made is San Daniele, home of the greatest prosciutto in the world. And I know my friends in Parma are going to want to arm wrestle me over that. And I love me some Parma prosciutto. I was a chef for a lot of years, and I'm telling you, I do. But I think, in my humble opinion, San Daniele, it's a little sweeter and a little more smoother texture at some times. And here is a picture of some hams with the leg on there, and then the brand that they burn into those hams. And here is the actual real deal. And it's no surprise to me that Pinot Grigio and prosciutto, and even prosciutto and melon and Pinot Grigio, oh my God, it's like a perfect match made in heaven. And also salamis and all of those kind of cured meats with Pinot Grigio. Yeah, man, Italians have been eating those two things together for 1,000 years. They go together. Okay, we know that. And then also, hey, Pinot Grigio is really good with like crispy fried things that have that oiliness of the fried calamari, and things like that. And it's fantastic. So now we're going not very far to the south, just across the border to Emilia-Romagna. Now remember, this area had these different provinces, like Parma and Modena, were all in here, and it's a thriving agricultural region with extremely fertile soils, because you've got 7 rivers dividing it, and those rivers have brought down all of that silt and alluvial soils that have landed down there in the plains, where now I can grow a nice straight carrot. I can grow all kinds of delicious produce. The grapes are amazing. And not only that, we're making some of the greatest cheeses and salamis, and Parma ham is right there too. In fact, here are the provinces, all right? Rimini, Cesena, Ravenna, Ferrara, Bologna, and that's where Bologna, the city, the best eating city in all of Europe, to me, in my humble opinion, is not Paris, it's Bologna, man. And Modena, where the balsamic vinegar is so famous that it comes from. Reggio Emilia, okay, guess what comes from there? Reggiano, Parmigiano, right? And Parma ham, okay? So they take the milk from the cows in the summer only and make this cheese, the Reggiano Parmigiano, the undisputed king of all cheeses, right? And they got these big 50-pound wheels, and they age them for a couple of years. And so what we're doing, okay, is taking the milk from the cows that only eat the summer grass and make these cheeses. When we make the cheese, we separate the curds from the whey. The curds go to make the cheese. The whey is the liquid. We feed the pigs, milk-fed pigs, and they are used to make the Parma ham. So everything is an ecosystem that feeds itself and feeds each other to create a fantastic system of agricultural and animal husbandry and all of those things for centuries, 1,000 years. We've been doing this over there, and they figured it out. And the only 3 ingredients in these prosciuttos from San Daniele and Parma are the ham, the pork, salt, and the time it takes to cure at the right temperature, in the right environment, to get this perfection of a cured ham that just melts in your mouth. It's really quite incredible. And next door to that is we get to Modena, and we can talk about a little bit about this because it's so precious to them. The balsamico, the balsamic vinegars in Modena, which actually is the true trust and pride and most precious thing that they have and own and keep in the households of Modena. For example, the dowry that was paid would be somebody's longest, beautiful aged balsamico, and the people keep their old vinegars and age them for long periods of time, and keep them in beautiful wooden boxes and precious chests and things, because they are so precious. As you can see, you can even purchase 150-year-old, but you're going to pay a price for it. And there are many, 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 many versions of balsamic vinegar. Some are just cooked, not well done, very inexpensive. Others are made in the proper traditional way and saved and aged over years and years and years. Now, balsamic vinegar is different than wine vinegars because we don't make the grape juice into wine first and then make it into acetic acid vinegar. They are actually not making it into wine. They're going right from the grape juice to a vinegar. And so there's a much fruitier flavor and a darker color and complexity. And as it ages over time, as you can see on this, it's just thick and unctuous and develop amazing flavors from aging over time. They're quite incredible. And there is a DOCG now, as I was saying, with Prosecco, where they changed the name of the grape from Glera. There is an area here where we've been growing Pignoletto, which really is a synonym. It is Gracchetto. Gracchetto Gentile. It's also the same grape as Pignoletto. And rather than calling it Gracchetto, and anybody could grow it in anywhere, and it was just an IGT grape because they can grow it in different parts of Italy where it's not part of their DOC, and it becomes an IGT wine. They thought and chose, rather than calling it Gracchetto in this place, they chose the name Pignoletto and call it a DOCG, create that so that it can only be used and protect the brand, if you will, there in that place. And so, Pignoletto Gracchetto has some perfume. It's aromatic. It's got citrus and pineapple and a little bit of white peach, and it can be a little bit, spicy with some white pepper and maybe even a little bit of ginger. And I think I get a little bit of saffron on it occasionally. They say chamomile, and certainly so. It's aromatic and really a great, good drinking white wine at a lower alcohol, so that it goes with many of the food, and certainly very well with cured salamis and prosciutto and all those kinds of things. And we also have the Lambrusco DOC, which is really overlooked. And hey gang, it's not just Chillicella or Riunite on ice, which they say Riunite on ice is so very nice, but that was 40-50 years ago. It's really evolved, and there are many versions of Lambrusco: still wine, frizzante, dry, amabile, which is slightly sweet, or sweet wine. All of those and everything under the sun pretty much is Lambrusco, and it goes really well with food, and it's being rediscovered in this country today, in U.S., in some very fine and cool restaurants they're running out of Lambrusco. It's crazy. So we've got some zones for Lambrusco around the Modena area and through Bologna. And as I said before, Bologna is the greatest eating city. And in Lambrusco, we find a lot of different flavors, of cherries, blackberries, aromatics of violets, and rhubarb, and almost a kind of creaminess to it, and very fruity wines of medium body, medium tanned, and it has some decent acidity, so that it goes really well with the food. And there are several. One that I particularly like is Fattoria Moretto, and I'm not saying it's better than everybody's, but they're pretty darn good. And just to show you the diversity and the versatility of Lambrusco, hey, they have a Pignoletto, but then they look at all these different Lambruscos that this one producer makes. Wow. And I like also Cantina di Sorbara. And, here you go. This is just the deliciousness of, a drop of aged balsamico on some very old Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, and some great salamis and prosciutto with good bread. And you enjoy the flavors, and you enjoy the beauty of our grapes, of our food, and of our land. I wanted to point out that there are some links and people that I'm giving credit to, certainly, for information and images in this presentation, in this class. And also, there's the links to those articles about the soil erosion in Prosecco and the Padua University official report. There are links to that too. That I encourage you all to dig deeper, because I have just barely scratched the surface with this armchair adventure for you. But there's much more for us to learn and share about the great wines and agriculture of Italy. So, grazie mille a tutti. Thank you all very much. I want to wish you a very wonderful day. Arrivederci. Ciao.